Hey, it's Chris, Liege of Games. So, this is a very clever game from Red Raven Games, Nightfall. Originally, going to crowdfunding, didn't do as well, revamped 2 years later. This is the final product. What does the final product look like? Why should you be interested in this in the mass saturated market of two-player style skirmish games? Let me tell you why this one maybe should catch your eye. Let's talk. In this game, you are going up knights versus demons, right? Classic struggle through the ages that everyone thinks of. Well, not really, but you're taking on the role of two knights or two demons on either side of this 1 versus 1, sort of asymmetrical, ability driven, card heavy usage on a 3x3 grid where you're slowly manipulating and trying to achieve various objectives to earn a certain amount of points to win the game. Now, that sounds very generic. And to be frank, it is a little bit generic in some of that. But where it lacks in some of the uniqueness in that sense, it makes up for it in spades with the actual mechanics of the game in the first place. It's got a very clever system here with the card-driven gameplay. It just does a slight twist on things, nothing insanely different that you've seen before, but also nothing that makes you go, oh geez, what sort of overhead are you going to have with this game? Because the other issue you have with games like this, or the Magic the Gathering clones, or those sorts of things is, they all come with a 30-page rulebook. This is like 8. And it doesn't lose some of the depth by having sort of forced overhead as well. Because when you have these cards, the uniqueness, the genuine oh moment is that they're double-sided. And not only are they double-sided, but potentially even triple-sided depending on how you play them or what mode you're in. Now, what I mean by that is with these cards, for example, you'll notice that on this top card, I have 2 different swords, attack icons. However, I also have an ability down here. I can use that in either way on my turn. But let's say I don't like either of those. Then you flip the card over and you go to the other side. The other side of this card has all of the icons, generically speaking, that are in the game. And what's great about that is then you can use any one of those. Now you play a certain number of cards per turn and then rinse and repeat. And so you're going to be activating your characters back and forth, manipulating them on this, 3x3 hex-based grid. And these grid spaces are also going to have slight nuances on them, slight text that's going to affect people entering, people exiting, powers that can be done, or even the manipulation of the tiles themselves. And that's sort of intriguing, right? It's adding a third dimension to the game in that sense. And did I mention standees? If this was just I have 2 characters and you have 2 characters, right? I grab my monsters right here. I put my monsters down on the board here, and then I grab my knights and I put my knights across from them on these spaces, and then that was it, right? That would be relatively bland, because what those games turn into is a slugfest, right? They try and make it more tactical, they try and make it more spatial in how you're rearranging them and mixing and matching and that sort of thing, right? But it sort of just turns into, I stand next to you, I do a couple damage, you stand next to me, whoever can do the most first wins, gets knocked out, okay, rinse and repeat, runaway winner sometimes. There you go. This doesn't allow for that because you have other creatures, other elements that you're going to be having to either protect or deal with. So, for example, the knights have these little elders that they're going to have to be protecting. And you can see on the side here that they have little heart trackers. And if they get knocked out, then that's an additional victory point situation for the demons. Just like knocking out the heroes or the knights or the demons is going to give the opposite team points, this is another way for the demon team to score additionally. Subsequently, the demons will often have imps that are spawning in various places on the map as well, adjacent, next to, in various spawn points on the board. And those are going to be targets for the knights as well, adding another layer. Now, if we go over to the cards themselves, it doesn't seem like anything unique. When I show you what these look like, I mean, they all give a health value and they have 2 separate abilities for the demons, right? And you go through and there are a ton of these, and you go through the knights, same thing. And they have some shields on the knight side of things to block some health damage, if you will. And so it gives you a nice variety. I mean, that's one thing I'll say. When you have 10 demons and 10 knights. And so for a retail version of a game like this to have 10 of each, for asymmetry purposes, one, that's really impressive. Because the other thing I worry about when you have 10, correct, is that they're more like Simon's characters from their stretch goal box, where some of them are unique and some of the other ones are kind of like half-baked. No. These are distinctly different, and they act distinctly different in that sense. And you get a good example of how these are going to work. Every action that I mentioned when you have these cards requires one icon to do. Healing, defense, attack, melee, ranged, all of that stuff, except for the magic icon. You need 2 magic icons to do 1 magic attack, or 1 magic ability on the card here to activate one of their special powers. Which again makes it so that if you only have the back of one of these cards, you're not going to be able to do what you want to do. But the fact that you can play either of the other things on this other side as well, 3 different actions, 1 card, that is a heck of a lot of tactical variability and replayability depending on the situation. This is what I love from a freaking skirmish game, to give me lots of this without lots of this. Because, I mean, it's great to have Mythic Battles Pantheon, right? But that's a beast to get to the table. This, you know, read the rules, read the cards, you're good to go as you play. And the other thing is these decks for the knights and the demons, they are massive. Let me show you how big this is. I mean, this is a thick stack of cards that are all different. And so it's really impressive from that aspect too. Now, I'm talking only about the PvP element of things, right? There's a campaign, there's a solo version as well, and I've played both of them. I am less enamored, I would say, with the solo version as well as the campaign. I mean, the campaign is fine. It's fine. The solo version also, it's okay. Because basically what you're doing is you're drawing 2 of these demons, you have your knights, and then you slowly cycle through the demons as you go. And the AI system is nice because you have a whole separate AI deck that you're going to be using, that again, you have double-sided cards that sort of flip. Because again, say you have this Bloodshade still, right? You have this double-sided card, and so they get 2 actions on the AI's turn. One is going to be this top part. The second one, you flip up for the next card, and it's going to be this minor one. The problem with that AI system is sometimes the actions just don't make sense. Sometimes the actions are clearly out of order or out of what would be the most advantageous if it was a human player across from you. It isn't always logical in terms of what it should be doing order of operations wise based on the randomness that comes with this. And yes, that makes it maybe potentially a little bit fairer. It makes it potentially a little bit easier, but it also makes it kind of a little bit anticlimactic at the same time when they do something nonsensical that really you go, ha 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 ha, sucker. Like it's almost takes away from the enjoyment, right? Because when we play a game like this, when you play against the game, right, you want to feel like you outplayed the game, not the game just did something silly and you won because it did something silly that didn't make sense. And that's what sometimes these AI cards do. I mean, there's very unique things even on these AI cards, even more so than some of the other cards. But it also either completely piles on and destroys you because of the sequence of events, or it can just be a complete swing and miss. And that's why, you know, I get a little bit fearful of games that come out with all 3 of these modes sometimes, or even 2 of these modes. I routinely have concerns about that when I see crowdfunding games go, okay, competitive, cooperative, and solo, right? Or we're doing competitive and cooperative, but there's been so many people clamoring in the comment section for the solo mode. And that's where this game is really weaker in terms of if you're looking for it for either of those 2 aspects, the campaign version or the solo version. This game is by far and away, in my opinion, much better. Its strengths are significantly exemplified in the head-to-head one versus one style of things, with the elements on the tiles themselves in these areas, with the I'm choosing how I'm going to interact versus your demon, going after an elder, going after the imps. Where am I going? How am I going? And also just the try-use cards are going to be just more useful, because part of it, like I said, these cards are so good because you get to use all of them. And when you're playing with the solo version, the demon deck just doesn't get used. I mean, you have the solo deck, but it doesn't fully replicate this. It's something that's just lost in translation. I'd rather have one really, really, really excellent rather than one good, one kind of good, and one not really as good, right? And not that, again, they're bad, not that they take away from the PvP, but I just wonder if more had been on the PvP side of things. You could have added another layer, another variant, another just level of complexity that we've seen with a few other games. More like Disney Sorcerer Alliance, where as you play through, it adds and adds and adds just another layer if you want, but if you don't, it is completely a full game without it. And I wish there was just another slight something with the PvP. Again, not because it's bad, not because it's incomplete, but just to give a little bit of frosting on the top, the whipped cream and cherry, if you will. So what are my thoughts final in this game? It's really better than I expected. I went into this sort of thinking this was going to be a very generic, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, system. I thought it was going to be a very generic sort of combat back and forth. Like I said, pound, 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 back and forth until one person falls over and just kind of runs away with things. Because, you know, often with these games, the first one to get the kill has a much higher % chance of winning. And this does not have that element nearly as much, which is great. Absolutely fantastic. It allows you to catch up. The strengths, these multi-use cards are just freaking fantastic. I love the multi-use cards here. They just work really, really well with the differing of all of them in terms of what they can do, how they can be used, and everything in between from the fronts to the backs. But the weaknesses of this game is if you're looking as a solo gamer or you're looking as something smallish campaign, yeah, it works. But I think there are probably ones that do it slightly better as well at the same time. But if you're looking for something that's lower overhead, more fantasy-esque, with different card-based system, because that's what you can say about other ones, is there's a lot of randomness. And there is randomness from this deck draw, but it's mitigated by the try-use of each single card each time you draw up your hand each round. And the variability between the demons and the knights will keep you on your toes on either side as well, and finding the cool combinations and the combos of abilities and knights with knights and demons with demons and summons and all sorts of just crazy abilities to go along with that. The sum is greater than the individual parts in this game, and I love it when that happens. Is it going to be for everyone, especially if you're looking for something heavier, something with a lot more tactical nature? Because I mean, again, it is only a 3x3 grid when you're looking at this. And so there's a limited amount of spaces that you're going to be going through. There's a limited amount of distance you can put between yourself and somebody else. Again, the PvP is going to be AI driven, which doesn't always make sense, but it accomplishes what it's setting out to do in terms of providing a fun experience, especially head to head, trying to outmaneuver, trying to outdo the person across from the table. And that's ultimately why you buy a game like this in the first place. There you go. Nightfall, Red Raven Games sent me it to talk about. Again, love the fact, cannot understate this, that these are all standees, right? Like, I opened this box and I was like, oh, standees! So that's another huge plus too of Red Raven Games staying on this side of things, keeping the cost and the production down, making it more affordable across the board too. And I can't understate that. It's nice to have games that stay on this side of things as well. And so that's another strong positive here at the end. That's all I got. Nightfall, check it out if you're interested. Let me know if you have any comments or questions down below. Do the YouTube thing, and I'll see you around. Stay classy. Have a great day.